Now this has been a long time coming. As a Godzilla kaiju fan, I'm often asked what the best film is in the series, which kaiju is my personal favorite, etc, etc. Shin Godzilla, however, has been the number one thing I've been asked about for the last year or so. What did you think about Goji's new design? Did you buy that weird cell phone case? And what the fuck was with his tail? Oh, and did you like the film itself? Well, I can certainly answer that last question. So sit back, relax, and allow me to break down and review the newest entry in this 60-year-old franchise. Shin Godzilla 1.1, you are not radioactive. Now, we need a bit of context here before we move forward, so let's rewind a few years back. The director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Yoshinori Banno, was shopping around the idea for an IMAX Godzilla movie called Godzilla 3D to the Max, after the dust had settled on the incredibly disappointing box office results of Godzilla Final Wars. Sadly, Banno's film never really emerged from the depths, but his tireless efforts to seek funding were successful in eventually stirring up enough interest to bring aboard Legendary Pictures to produce Godzilla 2014. Still stinging by that lukewarm reception of Final Wars, Toho was content to let Goji sleep in another one of his long hiatuses from cinema, and in the meantime, why not let America take another crack at the radioactive Leviathan? And wouldn't you know it, despite some mixed reviews, Legendary's take was a huge financial success, and Toho was pleased with this decision. The time was now right, and Toho saw this as a great opportunity to quickly put into production another Japanese Godzilla film, but this time it would be a radical departure from any other version of the creature seen up until that point. So, shortly after the release of Legendary's entry, Toho themselves announced that they were working on this new film, and that it would share directors, those two people being Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi. Now, Anno requires no introduction. That being said, I'll introduce him. He first made waves in the anime world that are still being felt to this day with his seminal work Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you've seen even a bit of the anime or the movies or even played the games, you would have been nodding your head wistfully when this announcement was made. An incredibly apt and wise choice for the new voice of Godzilla that would bring something completely unique to the franchise. Higuchi, however, is a bit of a mixed bag. While he already had experience working on previous Godzilla films as a special effects director and as an assistant director on Eva, the last two films he directed on his own were, the Toho-produced Attack on Titan films. Moving on, this pair seemed like they would be a perfect match to handle a new Godzilla flick, as one had extensive experience in live-action special effects and storyboarding anime and CGI films, while the other being a visionary storyteller and director. But sometimes, having all the right ingredients and chefs in the kitchen won't always make for an appetizing dish. But that ain't the case with Shin Godzilla. It's fucking awesome. Now let's take a whirlwind tour of the film, shall we? Shin Godzilla starts off incredibly strong, spearheaded by a very quick pace moving from a geyser of steam rising off the coast of Japan to a mysterious abandoned ship, and finally to government officials who are mulling over live reports of this unforeseen natural phenomenon. We spend the next few minutes watching the glacial response from the government, which is a very clear critique of the bureaucracy that ties up the major decision-making when unforeseen disasters strike. Things go from weird to worse when early eyewitness reports of a giant marine animal are, just waved off by the senior officials, only for that same marine animal to suddenly make an appearance, almost like it's a giant fuck y'all to the people who just called the existence of such a creature bullshit. The beast then makes landfall on Kamata in the Oda ward. This form of Godzilla is affectionately known as Kamata-kun. Now, while this form has achieved an adorable persona on Japanese social media and the like, the creature is actually pretty fucking disturbing. There's an almost unfinished fetus-like quality to it, and the way it moves its body feels very odd and puppet-like. This is the point where the Japanese government just fully established themselves as full-on Bumble Kings. No one knows what the fuck to do. Everyone's trying to pass the buck, and shit is just flying everywhere in their offices. We are introduced to a lot of characters very quickly, and the Japanese nameplates just fly across the screen every time one of them pops up. The character we're immediately drawn to, however, is Rando Yaguchi, a simple deputy chief secretary who is bitter about his superior's hesitation to act under pressure. After Godzilla's first attack, where he evolves into a more upright and formidable creature and then slinks back into the ocean, Yaguchi and the other officials are surveying the rubble left in Godzilla's wake. And pretty much they're all like, oh well, you know, we tried super hard and we got some good hits in, so good stuff, people. Yaguchi, however, takes a look at the devastation and utters a silent prayer. And this is the moment he vows to take this threat seriously and succeed where his government failed. This here, folks, is our pro-tag. Japan goes back to normal over the next day or two, but behind the scenes, the Prime Minister and all his officials are just screaming at each other, like right in their faces. No one really knows what the fuck Godzilla is, where he is, or how to stop him. Yaguchi, however, forms his own club of nerds, rebels, and weirdos to work on alternative solutions to finding and stopping Godzilla, while the higher-ups continue to, roll around their own feces. More characters start just appearing out of nowhere, most notably the awkward and confusing Kayoko Ann Patterson, a U.S. Senator's daughter who grew up in America, but she has a super thick Japanese accent, and she sometimes speaks Japanese and then randomly switches back to English. It makes no sense. She's a liaison between Japan and the US, and then just starts working with Yaguchi to unravel the origin of our new kaiju overlord. Speaking of which, Goji is back on the scene, performing for you, and has evolved into his full Shin form. Fortunately, over the last few days, the Prime Minister has grown some balls and decides to throw everything they can at the big lumbering doofus. Spoilers! It doesn't work. Nothing the Japanese armed forces do even prompts a passing fart from our giant hero. But don't fret, the USA is here to save the day. They offer up stealth drones that'll hopefully rain down the pain on Goji until he explodes or gives up or whatever. The USA drops bombs. They're really good at it, trust me. These bombs actually damage our boy and get him really fucking pissed. Now, this might be the most cataclysmic scene of destruction in any Godzilla film to date. He shoots purple death lasers out of his mouth, his tail, his spine, just fucking wrecks everything. It's clear that while Goji was underwater evolving, he was in the lab, gained some brand new tech, and he showed up to fucking nationals. Little guy, though, tuckers himself out so hard that he kind of goes into suspended animation to recharge his batteries. From there on out, it becomes a race between Yaguchi's team and the USA, who are prepping a nuclear bomb to kill Godzilla while he's resting up, as they estimate they only have a few days before he's back on his feet. Yaguchi and his turbo nerds need to come up with an alternate solution so Japan does not have to come face to face with another nuclear threat, even if it's to kill a bigger one. I'm just going to leave it there for now, as I feel like it gives a pretty broad idea of how the film plays out. So, watch it if you want to get the full experience. But for now, let's just go straight into what I liked and what I didn't like. Right off the bat, you can feel a very different hand guiding this film than any other entry in the franchise before it, as there's a certain elegance to the directing and sweeping cinematography rarely seen in these types of movies. Despite the fact that there's a 300-foot-tall monster on the loose, things feel incredibly grounded and realistic throughout most of Shin Godzilla's runtime. The political process in which decisions are made in the government offices also feels very authentic, which is why this was viewed as biting satire in Japan when the film premiered. All of this to say that if you're into tokusatsu or sci-fi films in general, Shin Godzilla is a different beast altogether. It's more like a Japanese West Wing versus Godzilla than anything else. Now, human characters in kaiju films are some of the most disposable and forgettable in all of cinema, and unfortunately that does sort of remain true for the majority of the cast here, thankfully with a few exceptions. While you won't see any startling character arcs or interesting backstories here, there are some standouts like the aforementioned Yaguchi and Kayoko, but there's also Hiromi Ogashira as the frank but brilliant brilliant nature conservation director who is always on point with her fucking shit. But this movie is not a character study, however. It's about Japan dealing with a sudden and horrible threat, some type of sea creature that fed on disposed nuclear waste for decades beneath the waves, unbeknownst to man. I'm a huge fan of Godzilla's evolutions in this film. It's a simple but effective method to give the character more mystery and depth. The very fact that when confronted with a threat, Godzilla will adapt to defeat it on an evolutionary level. They even present the idea that Godzilla could sprout wings to support its weight, to move across the globe, or start procreating by itself, makes it like the most devastating thing ever. The CGI on display here is also the most stunning I've ever seen in Japanese film, but make no mistake, there are still a few shots here and there that lag behind Western special effects studios, especially the brief scenes of Godzilla evolving. When he goes from Form 2 to Form 3, it looks a bit shit. When we reach his Shin form, however, I do have a slight complaint. The creature barely displays much character within his movements. He feels very stiff and sort of statue-like. Now, you could make the case it makes it more frightening, but compared to how animated and crazy Kamata-kun is, it just feels a little lacking. Only in the final confrontation do you see Shin start to emote a bit more, but I would have preferred to see the creature display that same personality throughout the rest of the film. Speaking of emoting, one thing that didn't bug me initially upon the first viewing, but has since grown to another small nitpick, is that I don't really like the reusage of Godzilla's iconic roars. This new monster is so different and weird. I would have loved to hear a brand new roar to set it apart as well. Now, I know it's paying homage to the films of the past, there's already more than enough of that going on as it is, as they also reuse many musical themes and even visual callbacks to the prior films. Legendary Goji has a great design and a brand new roar to boot, so why can't Shin? You can see I'm getting into the negatives here, as I wanted to sort of get them out of the way as I lead to my biggest problem with the film. The first two acts have this incredible pace that don't let up for the most part, driving the narrative forward while introducing a lot of elements. However, the third act does away with this and slows to a crawl. Just after Shin unleashes a swath of destruction onto the city like never before, the film doesn't really harness this weight and sense of hopelessness very well. They just kind of cut to the next day and they're like, that sucked. And then they just move on. They didn't really capitalize on the horror and aftermath of Godzilla's actions all that well, and the next 35 minutes feels a bit limp as a lot of science talk happens, even more political maneuvering, and a good amount of air gets taken out of the film's sails. I think maybe editing this part down would have helped immensely keep that great clip that they were moving at before. And those are literally all my beefs with Shin Godzilla. The subplot of Goro Maki, a scientist who discovered Godzilla before the film even began and just as quickly vanished. The amazing musical score that screams Evangelion. The ingenious and somewhat plausible plan that Yaguchi and his team come up with to take down Shin, and the implied disturbing potential of Godzilla's evolutionary prowess. There's just so much that felt fresh and exciting, and that's the stuff that I really adored. Which brings me to the final point about the film itself. It's been recently revealed that we will not be seeing a new Toho-produced Godzilla film until after 2020, as it is outlined in their current contract with Legendary. It's also been stated that despite Shin Godzilla's cleaning up of the Japanese Academy Awards, winning Best Picture and Best Director, and it being the highest grossing film in that country of all of 2016, we might not actually be seeing a proper follow-up to Shin Godzilla at all. Anno and Higuchi have stated as of right now it's unlikely they'll be turning for a sequel, so the ball is firmly in Toho's court. This, in my opinion, is fucking bullshit. There's a huge amount of unsolved questions that this film asks, and the thought of never getting answers to them is just insane. I don't know. Like, I just... And while the wafty smell of bullshit is so lingering in there, let me quickly go over how a good number of you will actually be watching Shin Godzilla through Funimation's VOD or Blu-rays. It took them nearly a full year to finally bring this out, and sadly, it's not worth the wait in terms of the actual Blu-ray/DVD itself. So you get the film, and one extra. Godzilla vs. the Nerds, which is a paltry 10-minute interview with no one that had anything to do with the production of the film. Hey, I mean, at least they got legit kaiju superfan and Godzilla comic book artist Matt Frank in on the proceedings, but this just amounts to him and a few Funimation employees talking about how much they love the film. Yes, funny, you love the film so much that you didn't bother to import/translate the bevy of extras on the Japanese Blu-ray. Please, let me suck your dick for that. What did you include? Well, a horrible dub, of course. Listen, hey, look, I know dubbing Japanese media can't be easy, and for anime, it still makes sense to do so to a point, but for live action, who asked for this? I would have much rather them use the budget for this dub to get/translate the actual extras on the Japanese disc. There's fucking deleted scenes that apparently show weird Godzilla jizz all over the place, and it shows the crazy expensive animatronic puppet they never used. Why aren't we allowed to see that? Oh, but they included a reversible cover, so, I mean, that's cool. Now, despite my piss boiling over in radioactive rage over this, it's fine. The film is out, and who knows, if Funimation had picked it up, maybe no one else would have. Everyone can now just enjoy the core film, and that's what matters. And if you can hear the passion in my voice about this, you'll know that I truly do love Shin Godzilla for its unique vision, masterful cinematography, and chilling atmosphere. This now marks a very exciting time for the big guys. We are getting a fantastic sounding sequel in King of the Monsters, the anime Netflix films, and Kong vs. Godzilla over the course of the next 4 years. So, I mean, I shouldn't be complaining. I've been getting more Godzilla over the last decade than any period of my life. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. So do check out Shin Godzilla if you're interested. It does come, pretty highly recommended. It's not without its faults, but it's still an incredibly unique entry in the franchise, and I heartily recommend checking it out if you can. Also, yes, I have prepared an extra clip for you to watch today. Yeah! Do it, you bastard!